I'll do a very quick fork rebuild on these BSA forks. They've already been to pieces when I assessed them, so this is just sort of a recap really, that I didn't video them. I've done one already. All I'm doing is putting seals in. So first stage is there's an homemade fork seal removal tool. It's just sort of 2 pegs on the end. If anyone needs dimensions, I can do that for you. So that goes in there and locates in the 2 cutaways inside the seal holder. And then once it's in place, it is a little bit fiddly. That just turns and undoes the seal holder like that. Now, because these have got the fork seals out of them already, I can just lift that off, which kind of makes sense. Now, BSA in their wisdom made, for people that don't know, the forks are sort of tapered. You probably see it in the video. And it's wider there, and the seal, when it's in, the fork seal holder, won't come up past that bit. So you've got to take the leg out, the stanchion out of the lower leg, to get the fork apart and take the seal hole off backwards. You'll see it when I come to reassemble. I've already got the rings, snap rings, circlips, wire rings out already. So that dismantles that bit, and then it's just a case of pulling that upwards to get that out. Top bush, bottom bush, and a lock nut, which again I've already loosened previously when I assessed them. I'll get this over into the onto the other bench. Then normally to remove this, it's normally quite tight. It is, if it's not been battered too much, it's a loose sort of 11/16 width, but a flat, an ordinary open-ended spanner seems to fit sort of a lot better, but your wrist slipping off. What I found when they're tight, to be honest, 30mm metric tapped on a hexagon one works better and less risk of slipping. There is a proper BSA service tool, like a hammer tight spanner, like a flogging type spanner thing, that do these, because they're supposed to be done up tight. I can't remember if they give a specification, but basically it's that. There's a bolt with a hole in, a bottom bush, a top bush, and then normally your seal holder. I'm just going to clean these up of any dings. They're not the greatest forks by any means. If you were doing a full-on restoration, you'd replace them, and you'd replace the bushes and anything you needed, but I'm not going to do that because I'm doing a budget job. Oil seal replacement. Clean up the seal holder a bit. The oil seals I've got like a rib sort of thing there going on. Supposed to be the proper ones for the job. Bit of grease around them or a bit of oil, your choice. I always put grease on the inner lip of oil seals because they don't get otherwise lubricated until they're actually leaking. Again, personal choice. I've got a turned seal tool here. Now what you've got to remember is the seal holder is that way up, and you want the oil seal the same way. So the gaiter spring is that side as it's going in. So mount it on my seal inserting tool there, like that. Get it started nice and square, and then again it should just about press in. You can either tap it in, or I'm just going to go and do it on the press, so give me a moment. So there's your oil seal into your seal holder the correct way up. With the leg cleaned up inside and out, I've got it clamped in an old yoke, because it's easier to work on that way. Bit of oil on the leg. You can use your fork oil if you're using fork oil. 1030, Castrolite as it says in the Ainda manual. Straight 10 or 20, or whatever your choice of fork oil is. All subjective opinion. Then the seal holder goes on at this stage in the game. Carefully over the leg at the bottom. And up on there. The next thing you want to put on is your circlip. Then the top bush, but sometimes there are shims between in the leg between the circlip and the top bush to stop this top bush bouncing up and down inside the slider. The way to check if it needs shims is to assemble that into the bottom leg now, put the circlip in and see if it lifts up and down a little bit. If it does, you need to shim it to stop. You get sort of a clatter as you're going over uneven ground, and this is bouncing up and down inside the slider. Again, personal choice if it's going to bother you, but there are shim kits available. So that one goes on. Check for play in that. There isn't a lot in this. They feel fairly reasonable. The best time to check for play is probably when they're assembled before you dismantle them. To be honest, you can feel for play in the legs then. Bottom bush on. Make sure these holes are clear, because that's your damping. In the centre of the fork at the bottom, on the lower leg or the slider part, there's like a tapered wedge that controls the damping. I think it's removable on these. I know it is on Triumphs because I've made some. It must be on these. Just bolt in from underneath. I can't remember. I've not looked. It's been a while. Last time I did an A65 was a long time ago, which is the same forks, and some of the forks, the competition ones and that, have a damper rod up the middle as well. You might come across that. Right, this little bit, right, you put Loctite on if you want, your choice. There was no Loctite back in the day, so just put it in and tighten it up if you're happy with that. Just like out of shot there. And that, I'm doing all this, you've probably noticed, on my mobile phone. I'm trying InShot Video Editor. That's why it's coming out, the last video, a little bit weird on the screen on the telly. If you watch it on the telly. Let's get a mallet. So I've got my socket well on there. That's good and tight, German standard as they call it. And you've got to try and get your socket off. Like that. So that's your basic assembly. So you don't forget that circlip, which you'll regret it. Right, we can go over to the bottom leg or the slider. So I'm going to put a bit of oil just in there, just a little bit of lubrication, not too much, because you'll put oil in the end anyway. There's a couple of different amounts. I think there's like 5.5 ounces and 4 ounces, something about a couple hundred cc, I think. And as I say, of your favourite fork oil. And then that quite literally just slides in there. These have got to be one of the easiest forks ever to rebuild, except for that silly seal arrangement. If they'd have done something different with that, where you could have made it parallel, it would have been much better. Now you want to make sure that that top bush is seated properly, so where the little notch is, when you do it you'll understand, the little notch that helps you remove the circlip, I'll just get a little brass punch and just tap that bush down. Now refit the circlip, which I'm not going to video because it can be a bit of a faff, but just be wary of damaging the fork leg. It's a case of just working it in till it clicks into place. Let me do that off camera. That is my circlip around there in the groove, and don't put the open end where that little cutout is, because that's where you remove it. So you want the wire overhanging that little cutout there for future use. Just make sure it's seated in. Anyone who's done that will know why I didn't video it. Honestly, it will. Next stage, the BSA book says something like medium or number 5 twine. One ring of twine round that little groove there, but we've kind of moved on, and you can either put some Loctite thread sealer, something like that in it if you want, silicone, PTFE, or your choice of whatever you want to use. These, when I took them to bits, had silicone round them. I prefer PTFE, so I go a few winds round flat on the threads like that, and then I do the twist bit, and I put a twist or so of PTFE in that little groove. Now some people say, oh no, don't use that, they'll unscrew and various other things, but as I say, it's your personal choice. I've never known a problem with this method, and then when you come to dismantle it to service the forks years later, because they'll last so long, you won't find so much that the seal holder has rusted to that bit, to the slide, to the leg. It's been much easier to dismantle. If it's an old beta bike and you're not worried about it, get your Stilsons out now, or your strap wrench if you haven't got the BSA tool or made one. But as I've got my wonderful stainless steel from the food industry again, seal tool. I like to do it that way. So I'll tighten that up now, and basically that's it, apart from putting your oil in after you've assembled everything. I'll go through the assembly method and putting them into the yokes of their external springs. So you need a pull tool, which is, mine's homemade. It looks something like that. Screws into the top of the fork tube and pulls it up through the yokes to compress the spring. I'll go through that when we get to that stage. So that's it. Bye for now, and enjoy doing your BSA forks.